Defense reveals weakness in the ruthless world of power. Perception matters more than truth. It does not matter what you did or did not do, nor does it matter whether your intentions were pure or corrupt. What matters is how you are seen, how you are judged, and how others interpret your movements. The instant you begin to defend yourself, you are already losing ground. Defense is not strength. It is confession. It is the silent admission that you feel threatened, that you believe the accusations or attacks against you are strong enough to demand an answer. Think carefully when has a great ruler, a cunning general, or a master strategist ever paused to justify themselves to the crowd. Machiavelli understood that the powerful are never compelled to explain. To defend is to kneel, and once you kneel, even if your words are clever, your posture betrays you. People do not remember the sharpness of your explanation. They remember that you explained it all. They remember that you looked cornered. Imagine the prince in his court, surrounded by whispers of betrayal. Rumors fly that he is corrupt, that he is plotting against his allies, that he is unfit to lead. The weak ruler stands and protests his innocence. He brings forward documents, witnesses, desperate pleas. But what do the people see? They see a frightened man scrambling to protect his image. They see a leader who has allowed himself to be judged by the very crowd he should dominate. His words, however sincere, plant seeds of doubt. For if there was no truth to the accusation, why speak at all? Now picture another ruler. The same rumors rise around him. The same whispers spread through the corridors of power. Yet he says nothing. He does not flinch. He does not lower himself to the marketplace of words. Instead, he carries on with confidence, issuing decrees, making bold decisions, and acting as though the accusations never reached his ears. The people, uncertain, are left to wonder. If he does not respond, perhaps the accusations are too weak to matter. Or worse, perhaps he is so powerful that truth itself bends to his will. His silence breeds mystery, and mystery breeds fear. Defense is an equalizer. It drags the powerful down to the level of the accuser. The sovereign who explains himself is no different from the merchant defending his honesty in the marketplace. Once you defend, you make yourself common, and once you are common, you cannot command the awe that power requires. Machiavelli knew that the theater of power is built on distance. The ruler must stand above, untouchable, unshaken. Every act of defense erodes that distance, reminding the people that beneath the crown sits a man vulnerable to doubt. Even in personal struggles, this lesson applies. When someone accuses you of failure, betrayal, or weakness, your instinct may be to protest, to fight with words. But those words make you smaller. The moment you justify, you step into the frame set by your enemy. You let them dictate the stage, and you become the actor reading lines in their play. Power demands the opposite. Power demands that you write the script, that you decide the story others must believe. History is filled with leaders who understood this principle. When accused, they did not bend their knees to words. They answered with actions. They created victories, displays of wealth, acts of dominance that silence criticism not through explanation, but through overwhelming evidence of strength. The conqueror does not defend his invasion, he builds a new empire on its ruins. The ruler does not explain his corruption, he showers his court with gold and silences the whispers with gifts or threats. The genius of this is simple: people remember what they see far more than what they hear. To defend is to acknowledge the attack, to ignore is to rise above it, but to counter with action is to destroy it. Defense weakens because it gives the enemy the satisfaction of knowing they have touched you. Silence denies them that satisfaction. Boldness terrifies them. When you defend, you give them proof that their strike landed. When you remain unmoved, you suggest they have wasted their blow. And when you counterattack, you show them that daring to question you carries a cost they cannot afford. This is why Machiavelli insists never defend yourself. If you are innocent, time and power will erase the accusation. If you are guilty, defense only sharpens the suspicion. Better to let doubt remain in the minds of others than to prove it with your own words. Your enemies are not searching for truth, they are searching for weakness. Do not give them the satisfaction of finding it in your voice. Defense is weakness because it shifts the balance of power. It moves you from the throne to the witness stand. It places your fate in the hands of others, an audience, a mob, a council of rivals. But power belongs only to those who refuse to be judged. The true ruler does not stand trial, he creates the laws, he commands the judges, he bends the narrative until opposition crumbles. To defend is to accept judgment, to refuse is to rise above it. The wise know that strength lies not in argument, but in posture. Silence, confidence, and decisive action are the marks of a ruler who understands that defense is the tool of the weak. The crowd may whisper, the enemies may accuse, but the prince who never defends himself stands as an unshakable figure, untouchable by rumor, untouchable by doubt. Power is not about truth, it is about the story people believe. In every court, every kingdom, every political arena, the ruler who survives is not the one who explains himself, but the one who shapes the story others repeat. Machiavelli teaches that once you begin answering accusations, you have already allowed someone else to set the terms of your existence. The enemy frames the question, and you scramble to respond, but the master of power never plays that game. He does not answer questions, he invents them. He does not defend against a narrative, he replaces it with his own. Imagine the moment when enemies gather their voices against you. They accuse, they conspire, they attempt to define your name with their words. The instinct of the weak is to reply, to step into the circle and argue point for point. But the powerful know this is a trap. To argue within their frame is to give them the power of authorship. Once you argue, you are no longer the prince of your own story. You are a character in theirs, and characters can be written out at will. The master does something different. He ignores the questions entirely and directs the eyes of the people elsewhere. Instead of explaining why he is not corrupt, he creates a spectacle of generosity or terror. Instead of defending his loyalty, he stages a victory that makes loyalty irrelevant. Instead of arguing over his honor, he redefines what honor means in his court. The people soon forget the whispers, because he has given them a stronger story to tell. Consider how kings of the past wielded festivals, wars, and decrees. When rumors of weakness spread, they did not speak in denial. They marched their armies through the streets. They built monuments. They showered the people with rewards. The people did not walk away saying, "Our king is innocent." They walked away saying, "Our king is strong." That is the art of narrative control, burying the accusation under a mountain of spectacle until no one dares to remember it. The enemy who attacks you wants one thing: to force you to respond. They want you to be seen as reactive, defensive, desperate. But the ruler who controls the narrative never reacts. He acts. He takes the energy of the accusation and channels it into a new vision, a new story that silences the old. If they say he is greedy, he proves himself generous, but not with explanations, with displays of wealth and power that make the word greedy irrelevant. If they call him cruel, he reframes cruelty as necessary justice, a sign of strength that protects the people from chaos. In this way, he turns poison into nourishment, molding the story until even his flaws become virtues. This is why silence is not always enough. Silence leaves a void, and in a void, enemies may fill the space with their whispers. The skilled ruler fills the void himself. He creates a narrative so bold, so commanding that all whispers are drowned beneath its echo. He does not wait for others to tell the story of who he is. He tells it first, tells it louder, and tells it with such conviction that no other version can take root. Control of narrative is more than propaganda, it is survival. When you control how others see you, you control how they act toward you. People do not need truth, they need certainty, and the one who gives them certainty commands their loyalty. They want a story they can repeat, a clear image they can follow. If you let your enemies write that story, you are finished. If you write it yourself, you are untouchable. Even in the smallest interactions, the principle remains. If someone challenges your competence, do not rush to explain yourself. Show results, display achievements, and shift the focus to your success. If someone questions your character, do not beg for trust. Demonstrate power so undeniable that their opinion becomes irrelevant. Each time you answer directly, you sink into the mud. Each time you redirect the story, you rise above it. Machiavelli understood that rulers are not judged by truth, but by perception. History does not remember what you defended. It remembers what you created. The prince who wastes his time denying every rumor is forgotten, but the one who writes his legacy in bold strokes of action endures for centuries. That is why defense is the death of power, and narrative control is its lifeblood. In the cruel theater of power, hesitation is fatal. Machiavelli knew that the man who waits, who shields himself behind defense, becomes prey. Defense may protect you for a moment, but it cannot command respect. Respect comes only from aggression, from the audacity to strike before you are struck, from the refusal to cower behind walls. A fortress may save your life, but it will not save your reputation. The powerful do not hide. They advance, they seize the initiative, they attack. When you defend, you are acknowledging that another has set the stage, that you are merely reacting to their move. Defense is a prison, one built by the enemy's accusations, the enemy's schemes, the enemy's strategy. You sit inside, answering, explaining, parrying blows. But when you attack, you reverse the balance. Suddenly, they are scrambling, they are explaining, they are on their knees. Attack pulls the enemy into chaos and forces them to play your game. This is why the true ruler does not wait to be accused, challenged, or threatened. He anticipates, he moves first, he destabilizes his rivals before they can form a plan. Look to history and you see this principle at work. Those who clung to defense, who built walls and gave speeches of justification, were forgotten or overthrown. But those who attacked, who spread fear and awe with calculated strikes, became legends. The Roman generals who marched not to defend Rome, but to conquer lands far beyond its borders, carved their names into eternity. Their strength lay not in protecting what they already had, but in striking out boldly, forcing enemies to react to their will. Consider also the court intrigues of Renaissance Italy, the very stage Machiavelli studied. The prince who defended his honor by words lost influence, while the prince who cut his rivals down with whispers, alliances, or the sudden blade of an assassin secured his throne. People did not admire the one who argued his innocence. They admired the one who crushed his accuser so completely that no one dared to speak against him again. Attack silences faster than defense ever could. This principle extends beyond kingdoms and politics into every struggle of life. When you are attacked, your instinct may be to explain, to shield yourself with reason. But explanations do not erase doubt, they multiply it. The bolder path is to turn the strike into opportunity. If they accuse you of greed, attack with a demonstration of abundance that drowns them in envy. If they call you weak, respond not with words but with decisive action that leaves them reeling. If they question your loyalty, do not defend. Expose their own betrayal and force them into shame. By attacking, you transform their move into your weapon, and the crowd watching is left in awe of your strength. There is also a psychological truth here. The attacker dictates the terms of reality. Defense reacts to the enemy's vision of the world, but attack imposes your own. The one who attacks writes the script, decides the tempo, and forces the opposition to play catch-up. This is why even flawed attacks often succeed. They create momentum, and momentum is power. The defender, even if correct, always looks weak, always looks desperate, because they are dancing to another's tune. Machiavelli understood the brutal beauty of offense. He wrote that a prince must be like both lion and fox. The lion to terrify with force, the fox to deceive with cunning. Both animals are hunters. Neither waits for mercy. The fox does not waste time defending against the wolf. It tricks the wolf and takes the advantage. The lion does not explain itself to the jackals. It strikes, and in that strike, it earns the silence of fear. Attack is not simply an option, it is the language of dominance, the proof of command. To live by defense alone is to invite slow death. To live by attack is to master fate. When you defend, your life is governed by others, their rumors, their accusations, their games. When you attack, you seize control of destiny itself. You teach the world to see you not as one who responds, but as one who decides. And decision is the essence of power. This is why rulers who attack become untouchable. They do not wait for enemies to gather strength. They scatter them before they can unite. They do not wait for whispers to spread. They silence them with displays of cruelty or magnificence that overwhelm the senses. They do not wait for challenges, they create them, and by creating them, they prove themselves greater than any opponent. Attack transforms danger into opportunity, suspicion into fear, and fear into loyalty. Even when the attack is subtle, through words, through intrigue, through the manipulation of perception, it carries more weight than defense. A cutting remark delivered with confidence erases 100 accusations defended with trembling words. A sudden show of generosity makes liars look petty. A ruthless act of punishment makes whispers vanish overnight. Each attack builds your legend, while every defense chips away at it. The lesson is clear: do not be content to answer. Do not be content to shield yourself from the arrows of others. Seize the bow, fire first, strike boldly and relentlessly. For in the world of power, those who defend are consumed, and those who attack are remembered. To command power, one must understand a truth as old as kingship itself. Men fear what they do not understand, and they obey what they cannot predict. Machiavelli knew that the ruler who cloaks himself in mystery and cultivates fear will always be obeyed more than the one who explains himself with reason and justification. Explanation belongs to the weak, for it lays bare the inner workings of the mind, the doubts, the vulnerabilities, the hesitations. Mystery belongs to the strong, for it forces others to imagine, to guess, and to tremble before possibilities that may not even exist. When you justify yourself, you are stripping away the veil that separates you from the crowd. You are saying, "Here I am. Here is what I mean. Here is why you should believe me." But in the act of revealing, you shrink. You make yourself equal, human, ordinary. Justification is a confession that you care about their opinion, that their judgment can shape your destiny. The prince who explains becomes a servant of the people, while the prince who shrouds himself in silence, in unpredictability, in fear, remains their master. Consider the difference between a ruler who responds to every rumor with arguments and one who responds with silence and a sudden display of force. The first is studied, debated, questioned. The second is feared. People whisper about him, but they never know what he is thinking. They cannot anticipate his reaction, so they tread carefully, fearful of awakening his wrath. Fear does not come from knowing. It comes from not knowing, and power thrives in that uncertainty. Mystery is a weapon sharper than the sword. It allows you to dominate without lifting a finger. When no one can predict your intentions, they imagine the worst, and that imagination serves you better than any defense. They police themselves, they curb their tongues, they restrain their ambitions, not because you commanded them with explanations, but because they dread what might happen if they cross you. A ruler who defends himself becomes predictable. A ruler who leaves doubts unanswered becomes untouchable. This principle applies beyond rulers and courts. In every aspect of human interaction, the one who explains too much diminishes himself. In relationships, in business, in politics, those who constantly justify are seen as weak, insecure, needy for approval. But those who remain silent, who let their actions speak, who allow mystery to hang over their decisions, are perceived as powerful, confident, dangerous. People lean closer to understand them, but the curtain never lifts completely, and that tension creates respect. Fear itself is not cruelty for its own sake. It is an instrument of control. Machiavelli reminds us that it is safer to be feared than loved if one cannot be both. Love is fickle, dependent on mood, circumstance, and gratitude. Fear is enduring, rooted in the survival instinct that governs all men. But fear without mystery is blunt and predictable, and blunt force can be resisted. When combined with mystery, fear becomes an invisible chain that binds even the boldest enemy. They cannot fight what they cannot see. Think of the rulers who made themselves larger than life. They cultivated myths about their ruthlessness, their cunning, their supernatural insight. People believed they had eyes everywhere, that nothing could be hidden from them. That betrayal would bring swift and certain punishment. Often these rulers encouraged the rumors without ever confirming them, for the rumor itself was more powerful than the truth. Why deny that you are cruel when the belief in your cruelty keeps order? Why defend your honor when the shadow of fear achieves obedience? Even the smallest act of mystery carries weight. A pause before answering, a silence after an accusation, a sudden and unexplained decision. These moments unsettle observers. They remind the crowd that you do not play by ordinary rules, that your mind is not theirs to grasp. Mystery turns every gesture into a symbol, every silence into a riddle, and in that riddle power grows. People respect what they cannot measure, and they fear what they cannot predict. To justify yourself is to surrender your sovereignty. It is to invite others into the inner chamber of your mind and allow them to dissect you like a common criminal. To cloak yourself in mystery is to remind them that you are set apart, that you belong to a higher order. Power is not about being understood. It is about being obeyed. And obedience is not born of explanation but of awe, of uncertainty, of the lurking possibility that your wrath is greater than they can bear. This is why rulers of old often spoke in riddles, why they allowed oracles and omens to shape their image, why they surrounded themselves with layers of ritual and secrecy. These were not accidents of culture. They were deliberate strategies to elevate the ruler above the common man. Every unanswered question became a fortress, every rumor became a weapon, every shadow became an ally. A ruler who is mysterious and feared does not need to argue, because fear silences arguments before they are ever spoken. The lesson is clear: do not reveal yourself unnecessarily. Do not explain what need not be explained. Let others wonder, let them speculate, let their imaginations do the work of ruling for you. Fear will restrain them and mystery will keep them loyal. Power lies not in words of justification, but in the silence that forces others to write their own terrifying stories about what you might do next.